the subject of transition, the question of retirement comes up a lot. What are some of your thoughts on retirement in the midst of transition? What have you seen when it comes to retirement?
There's a really clearly discernible trend that people are living longer and practicing longer. No question about that. And I think that's going to continue to extend beyond current levels even. So I think that's an absolute trend. I think that financial preparation for retirement is a far bigger issue than people once thought it was. When personal portfolios cratered in the last recession, when the market tanked, a lot of people who were ready to retire all of a sudden said, I'm going to stay in my practice for a while longer, and I need to do that. And they found that they enjoyed it, and that they, in second guessing themselves, said, it would have been a mistake to retire earlier. Now some of those people are getting ready to retire, and others have discovered new life. And a second wind and a third wind when it comes to being able to sustain with passion the continual practice of dentistry. And that's exciting when people do that. So there's definitely a discernible trend. When I first started in this business, everybody said, I want to retire when I'm 55. Everybody said 55. Almost no one did it. Now, whether they were able to retire when they were 55 is one thing, or by those standards of those days. But the ones who were financially independent were having so much fun that they just continued to practice longer and longer and longer, and that's happening today.
Yeah, and tell us about when you define retirement for yourself. That can actually be dangerous. And you shared with me the story about your father, but when you don't let other people define you as far as retirement. And the dangerous part is when you define your own age, just very much like you mentioned, at 55, you have this in your brain, yes, that I'm going to retire and I'm not going to be that valuable after the age of 55. Tell us more about that.
In doing a lot of reading, the word retirement wasn't really in the American dictionary until the early 1900s. It's a relatively new word. And the word retirement in the dictionary means coming to an end. And in dentistry or in any business career, retiring means going out to pasture, you know, riding off into the sunset. We know all the cliches about what retirement is. Ceasing to be useful, being set aside, not making a difference anymore. What a grim, horrible definition of retirement. So I think it's time for the word to go away, and I think it's time for things to be redefined. So retirement goes away. There's a really great book, I'm blanking on the author for the moment, but there's a great book that I read called Life Launch. And Life Launch, and the theory of that book is that each time we go to a new phase of our life, we're launching a new life. We're reinventing ourselves and launching a new life. And I think that's really what retirement should be, in the best sense of the word.
Tell me about the walk with your dad.
We went on a fishing trip to northern Manitoba, all the Sletton men, when my dad was 80. He took everybody up there, and we had a wonderful, wonderful fishing trip. And on the day before we were going back home, Dad and I went for a walk. Dad, by the way, lived to be 97 and had a great dental career. He practiced until his early 70s. But on this walk, he said, you know, Paul, he says, I've outlived all my friends. I've outlived all my buddies. And he said, and I came to discover something really interesting. For all my buddies that died, he said, most of them expected to. Their parents had died at a similar age. He said their siblings had died, older siblings had died at similar ages, and so they just had that expectation. And he said, one of the things I've learned that I want you to know is, he says, never let anyone else define how old you are. And he said, and I looked at him and I said, what does that mean? And he said, never let anybody else define how old you are, especially yourself. He said, it's just a number. It's just a number. He says, and you can be youthful and vital. He says, I look in the mirror and I see, and I'm shaving a person that looks different than how I feel inside. And he said, so he just chose that attitude. And everybody around him and all the kids and grandkids and great-grandchildren all impacted by him and that philosophy.
What a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about the Dynamo dentist in California.
He's one of my heroes. I met a dentist. I was speaking at the ADA meeting in San Francisco, and during one of the breaks, this gentleman came up to me, and he was very, very handsome and looked like a Hollywood movie star and looked like Cary Grant, and was wearing a blazer and a tie and really looked sharp. And he says to me, I really like your message. I'd like you to help me put a 5-year plan together. And I said, great, I'd love to do that. He said, here's my business card. When you get home to Denver after the meeting, call me. And he said, and I know you don't have time to talk today, so please call me. And so I did. And I called him, and he became a client of mine. And upon getting to know him, I discovered that when I met him, he was 82. He looked like he was 60, but he was 82. And he wanted a 5-year plan. And I said, it kind of shook up all my old notions about what age is again, and how long somebody would practice and so on. I went into his practice, and I interviewed all of the team members. And to a person, they volunteered that they admired and respected him so much, and he was still doing tremendous quality dentistry at age 82. As a matter of fact, the prior year, he had spent and invested almost $50,000 in clinical continuing education. And he was still a great, great dentist, and they said, and if he weren't, we wouldn't be here. But he's miraculous. Well, he didn't, we put a 5-year plan together, but he didn't, he quit on me. He decided to retire when he was 86. And it was just a great experience for me. It was a great experience to know him and to work with him and to learn from that experience about what a great career can be and the importance of passion and what retirement means and how different it is from one person to the next.
And he holds the record.
He holds my individual personal record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine's 81. I knew a dentist that practiced till 81, but you knew somebody 86.
86.
That's great. That's great.
86, and he went out with a flourish.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So what are some of the factors that you consider if you're a dentist and you're watching this now and you're contemplating retirement? What are some of the things that you want to consider when it comes to transition as you look into the future?
I think that you need a 5-year plan. So no matter what your age is, you're going to need a few years to act it out. Now I'm assuming no problems with illness and things like that are unplanned. But you need a 5-year plan because you need that amount of time to figure out how you're going to exit from your practice. Are you going to go out abruptly, meaning are you going to sell your practice and then suddenly leave, or are you going to phase out? If your practice is large enough and substantial enough, a great strategy is to phase out, to pull back while remaining in the practice, and to begin trying on your new life outside of dentistry while still being in dentistry. That's a great way to do it, and make discoveries about what you want your next life launch to be when you retire. So some of the considerations are you have to do the financial planning and work with those advisors and know that you're able and capable of doing that. You have to not only do a practice transition plan, you have to do a new updated life plan. What's your next life going to look like? What kind of outside activities? The people who've done the best in retirement, by my observation, and I've helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dentists retire. The people who appear to do the best in retirement are people who have lives that are full of love. They have people that have lives that are full of passion. They are multifaceted people. They have a variety of interests. Most of them have a childlike curiosity about life. And they come to life every day saying, what can I learn, what can I experience, and what's out there to discover today? And if people do that, they just have a great life, and they're ready. Some come to retirement with a sense of dread. I'm a diminished person because I no longer do what I did my entire career. And that's I have a sense of sadness about that.
It's so funny that you'd say that, because I met Dr. Pete Dawson in my 20s, and I asked him this question on the first day that I met him. I said, what is the one piece of advice you would give a young person like me considering a future in dentistry? And he thought about it for a second, and he said this: don't ever stop learning. Stay curious your whole life, because there's a couple things you're going to learn. The more curious you are, the more you are in the game.
Yes.
And he says you'll find that those are your favorite people to be around anyway. It's never that much fun to hang around the dentist that has it all figured out. They're not that much fun. He said, even at my age, I don't have it all figured out. I'm constantly learning from the people around me, and it keeps me in this curious phase. And he's well into his 80s now.
Yes.
And still as sharp as a tack. So it's interesting that you said.
I have a great admiration for him as well. Zig Ziglar said once that there are some people who can brighten a room only by leaving it. And he said there are other people like Pete Dawson and my dad and others, and my client who practiced until he was 86, who brighten a room by entering it.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, another question I'm very curious about is, what if I'm a younger dentist partner and I'm watching this video, and I have an older partner who is very unsure about retirement? What are some of the questions I want to ask of myself, this relationship, and my partner? Maybe I've worked with a partner that's contemplating retirement, but it's still very gray. He's not sure, or she's not sure when he's going to retire. What are some of the questions I want to be asking?
The most common complaint that the young dentist has regarding the older dentist who's considering retirement is that they don't have a plan. And I can't make my plans as the younger dentist unless or until that older dentist makes their plans, so I can see my way through to a future that I'd like. In the chief complaint, of course, of the older dentists is that some young people can't make commitments and have real difficulty with that issue. So that's a chief complaint in that direction. But just having a plan and a timetable, it can be an approximate timetable. You can alter the timetable. Lots of people have discovered that they thought they were going to retire a lot earlier than they actually have or intend to. And that's great. So it's a flexible target, but you need to have a target. You need to, if you're running a race and there's no finish line, how do you know how to pace yourself? How do you know how to run the race most effectively so that you burst through the tape at the finish line with a burst of energy rather than just running laps? It is a great way to live to have the finish line identified, and it's not so much fun just to be running laps.
So the key here in contemplating retirement in any transition is to always have a 5-year plan and reevaluate it every year.
Update your 5-year plan every year. Update it every year. It's just like having a passion index. What are the things you're most passionate about? What are the 5 things you're most passionate about in the world, in your life? That list, if you make that list today, those things that are white hot, a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, if those things, if you rewrite that list 5 years from today, you won't have the same list. But you better not be working on the old list because that doesn't get the job done anymore. You got to be working on the new fresh list. So the updated 5-year plan every year is critical.